All right, thanks so much for registering and showing up for this important webinar. I'm going to hand it over to Xavier Stickler from the Downtown Neighborhood Association. I believe he's the vice chair there, or vice president. And then Scott Andrews will be walking through the newly reimagined Keller. Xavier.
Thank you very much, Carl. Hello, everyone. My name is Xavier D. Stickler, and I'm a student of architecture and urban planning at Portland State University. And as Carl said, the vice chair or vice president or something like that of the Downtown Neighborhood Association, as well as the chair of its Land Use and Transportation Committee. The Downtown Neighborhood Association was an early contributor to the Halpern Landscape Conservancy's plan for the Keller. We were brought in last year. We're very heartened by that. And throughout this process, the DNA has thoroughly considered both this proposal as well as PSU's. The Land Use and Transportation Committee thoroughly interrogated both proposals, and we came to a simple conclusion. The Keller is the superior option by every metric. Some in the city would consider maybe a reason to delay executing this vision or embrace the alternate of a new bill. But here's what I have to say on that. Austerity has never saved a city, investment has. Bureaucratic paralysis has never restored civic pride. Forward motion has. And withdrawing a landmark cultural institution from a cultural district has never made a city great. Forward vision has. Additionally, I've said this several times before City Council, but I think it bears repeating. Are we, as a city, merely interested in supporting the arts, in championing climate sustainability, and restoring our longtime valued buildings and institutions, or are we committed? And I think that's what this plan really boils down to. And to give a little bit more of an in-depth presentation on that, I'm going to turn it over to Scott Andrews of Melvin Mark Properties. Scott, thank you so very much for being here.
Well, thank you. Frankly, thank you for everybody who is here tonight and has an interest in what's going on. We really appreciate it. I'm going to hit a couple of the hard points to begin with, as Xavier suggested that I might. I mean, I got to tell you that the renovation of the Keller is really the only real prospect in front of City Hall at this point. It is a defined architectural project. It has a budget. We know it can be done. We understand the structure. We understand the soils. We have done testing on the structure itself. It would be a disaster to the neighborhood if it closed. Not only would businesses close, but other businesses would be hurt drastically. The parking garages, the hotels, the residential values in the neighborhood will go down. I mean, we've had a number of people tell us that one of the reasons why they're there is because the Keller is there, and a closed Keller would be a disaster. So we honestly think that this is by far, it's the most certain. It can be done in the shortest period of time. It's half the cost of moving it, and we know where the funding is going to come from. So it's a real project, and we really would appreciate everyone's support for it. I am going to attempt to load my presentation. Can you see that?
Not yet, Scott. Do you have your PowerPoint open? If you do, just make sure it's open and then go down to the share screen button on the center in the of the Zoom center bottom pane of the Zoom, and hit that button, and you should see, you should be able to select your PowerPoint.
Come on.
There we go.
There we go.
Yep, we're good.
Perfect. Perfect. So a little bit about me. I have been, as of June, 46 years with Melvin Mark, and have been focused on downtown Portland, basically high rises. And I've done a lot of civic things to try to make Portland as good as it can possibly be, because I think that that's important. I want Portland to be the best that it can. This slide shows you the people who put together this presentation, the entire construction project, the costs, the timing. It includes some very, very sharp people. Stu Fish is from London. Michael Curry, you might know from locally as being the Lion King king, and has done an awful lot for Portland and for the world, and really understands entertainment. The Shallot Collaborative here was actually hired by the city 5 years ago to do the interior design, and we added to that with new design. I'm sorry, I'm still dealing with a little bit of technical difficulties here. Here we go, I think. So thanks again for being here. We really think this is a super unique site with very special physical circumstances, a unique history, and urban assets that can't be replaced by a new facility anywhere in Portland. We've been very consistent about taking into consideration the cost of a closed Keller for the 19-month renovation period. And I want to tell you up front that we have the city's backing to include, at this point, $15 million to support opera, ballet, Broadway Northwest, and the other nonprofits that use it, that need to go someplace else in between. And given the difference in costs, it's very easy to add to the project and still keep it within a reasonable amount. As you probably know, the Keller has served Greater Portland for more than 100 years for concerts, theater performances, presidential speeches, high school graduations. It's the largest theatrical auditorium in Oregon, and it's the only theater in Portland capable of hosting Broadway performances, large operas, and ballet productions that include the Nutcracker. First built in 1917, it was substantially modernized in 1967. And frankly, after the last 50 years, it's in need of being renovated again. What I want to point out here is when they took the first 20 feet off the front of the building, and that's on 3rd Avenue, at the front of the building, it's right across from Keller, the world famous Keller Auditorium, which is connected to the world famous Keller sequence. They actually did quite a bit of structural work. They poured a lot of foundations at the front to support the columns and the columns at the entry. And they did some interior renovation as well. And the city's look at the structural did not include those factors, unfortunately. So our purpose is to revitalize, rehabilitate, and expand the Keller into a 21st century state-of-the-art, world-class performing arts venue, while realizing the benefits of the centralized location, the surrounding infrastructure, existing structure and materials, and its potential to energize the neighborhood and take a better advantage of the physical relationship to the Keller Fountain. The new destination turns the auditorium inside out with interactive programming. the world-renowned fountain, and the programmable public plaza that will diversify and expand audiences in downtown Portland. Oops. So this next slide shows you part of the retrofit. Our team completed a comprehensive 8-month multidisciplinary feasibility study for rehabbing and expanding the Keller, including programming, architectural structure, soils engineering, urban design, construction cost estimating, and schedule planning. The in-depth feasibility analysis utilized soils information, structural testing of existing reinforced concrete, and brick masonry, not available in the early study commissioned by the city. I think this work should be considered a very reliable guide for redevelopment of the facility and should be considered to supersede the prior structural studies commissioned by the city. We really believe the revitalized Keller can become a Portland icon and catalyze the neighborhood. But we've also taken to heart that the essential life safety, functional visitor experience deficits voiced by the users and operators. We want to be clear, all of these have been addressed by our team, beginning with a comprehensive seismic retrofit strategy that will bring Keller fully into compliance with current code for new buildings, thus ensure protection for cast, crew, the public, and preservation of the asset. From a layman's standpoint, the difference between meeting current building code and new building code is that in current building code, you need to be able to walk out of the building safe, but the building may not be repairable. In new building code, not only do you walk out safe, but the building can be repaired. And in the case, honestly, of this building, if it couldn't be repaired, it would be 10 years before we could have it again. And that just doesn't work. So the vision established by Stu Fish was used as the starting point, but the design team facilitated a collaborative and inclusive process that prioritized the needs of the users. Over the course of a number of workshops, we gathered input from Broadway Across America, OBT, Portland Opera, the Portland Five, and used it to establish goals and implement solutions. This work incorporates programming direction from the arts groups that use the Keller, along with those who manage and maintain it. Through those workshops, key themes emerge: safety, accessibility, improved visitor experience, brand experience, operational efficiency, and the proposed concept addresses all of those. Loading in the back of the house were major concerns. Our concept includes expansion of the building to the east to accommodate a code-compliant and proper loading facility, reconstructed dressing rooms, additional rehearsal space, and other backspace program areas requested. This approach enables us to bring natural light and views into the backstage areas that house the day-to-day activities of the production companies who use the building, which makes working there a nicer place to be. Oops, went too far. Accessibility. Inclusivity. The concept embraces the robust inclusivity inherited in universal access and full compliance with ABA, welcoming everyone equally through the site, interior, public, and back of the house spaces. What you're looking at here on the right-hand side in yellow are all of the new ADA accessible ways to get through the theater. Currently, the only ADA accessible spaces are at the very back. We create about 200 new opportunities for ADA seating and in very good situations. And we also kind of expand the seating both from left to right to provide for, frankly, better views to the stage while you're there. Going the wrong direction here. This slide's really wonderful. It shows off a lot of different things. I think the most important to me is it shows how we raise the stage to 18 inches. And by doing that, we're able to change the slope of the seating area such that it isn't so steep at the back, but maintains a slope big enough that everybody can see over the top of the head of everyone else. It also provides, by raising the stage 18 inches to do that, a plenum underneath it so that you can actually air condition and heat the building from below, which everyone knows is much more efficient than trying to do it from 50 feet above. And this picture also shows off an expanded and improved loading dock on the right-hand side that I talked about earlier, that's going to make loading and unloading much more efficient and will provide us a lot more days to be able to use the Keller, just because it could currently take, given some of the size of the sets that come in, a couple of days easily, and maybe 3 to load and unload. Pictures of the primary piece of the Stewfish design. It slopes both inward and outward. It's going to create a better sound stage on the fountain itself. Not a lot of happens within the fountain itself because it's a historic landmark, other than cleaning up and landscaping. But the biggest change, I think, is the programmable plaza that you see in between. We realize that we can't close that street down all of the time, but it can be closed down much of the time. And during that time, we can actually program activities that will bring people to the neighborhood and to that location 24/7. 360 days a year. This is Market Street, and it shows how the building is working to engage instead of being this big blank, poster project. This is a proposed art installation along Market. It also shows off a couple of things here. That's an opportunity for folks to be able to look at the inside of the Keller from the outside when it's closed. And those doors actually will provide another opportunity for loading and unloading. And given that we're going to put a new restaurant and bar and open the building 360 days a year, there will be a lot more loading needs to the building, and we're providing for them. This is a shot from what they call the second balcony. I call it the third floor. It is programmed to be a restaurant and would include the first time that the building has ever had a kitchen inside of it. So for the first time, the building will actually be able to create food on the premises and not have to bring it in. And you're looking at the center at a grand staircase that will bring people up from downstairs. And, obviously the view from the third level to the fountain itself is fantastic. This is a shot straight down on 3rd Avenue, and it shows the ability to create this wonderful programmable plaza. It cannot be shut off all of the time because we know that during shows, the ability to drop off and pick up folks who are disabled it's a very necessary location. It also turns out that there's a high-level cable installation that's underneath it that the city needs to get to. But nonetheless, about 80% of the time it can be shut off. And if anybody has ever been to a TEDx event where they screen off both ends of it and put food courts and places to drink and view it turns out to be a very exciting venue. This came from Michael Curry. I mean, he is unbelievable at imagery and costumes. There are wonderful 3D high dimension cameras that are available today. And this depicts a picture on top of actually a waterfall on the fountain. And there is the capability here of having cameras on the inside of the Keller that are showing what's going on stage that could be shown outside. So where organizations were more interested in creating a bigger audience and not necessarily, or maybe already had filled the theater, they could actually show all or pieces of their performances outside to people who would be able to walk up and enjoy them in hopefully very good weather. Portland is a very sustainable city. We try to look after our climate. And by far the most efficient way to do that is to renovate the existing building, not build a new one. On the left, you're seeing what the estimated CO2 annual distribution from the Keller is. It's almost 15,000 metric tons. At the center, because of the efficiencies that come through the remodel from air conditioned heating, insulation, etc., it goes closer to 9,000. In a new building, it comes close to the old one. And frankly, that's because in a new building, you are pouring a lot of concrete and you are, digging a foundation. And there are other aspects that don't have to happen when you're renovating. But the big number is if you have to build another garage, and quite frankly, you do in any of the other locations. Broadway came out with their report within the last couple of days and said they need 1,200 parking spaces. Well, we have close to 4,000 in the Keller neighborhood. And currently PSU is talking about building 500 underground spaces, which isn't enough. But this 1,000-car garage here is equivalent to 13,300 metric tons of CO2, which has been described to me as the equivalent of every car, truck, bus, and train in Portland metropolitan area over 5 years. It is not insignificant. We are working very, very hard to promote a more diverse programming, both at the Keller itself as well as with the fountain and the new programmable plaza. And Gail Castillo has been putting together a committee who's already gone to work dealing with those issues and has made some major inroads. And we're really proud of the fact that given that the building is going to be more efficient to be able to load and unload, and there will be more days available, that there will be really more opportunities to do a more diverse thing. So that's the 21st century Keller. I would tell you, we think it is the most important project, again, because it's very credible. The design is completed. We know what the costs are. We know what the construction time is. We know how it can be funded. And we think it is a key to the neighborhood, both from a business standpoint as well as a residential standpoint. So that's my presentation. I would be happy to take questions or whatever Carl thinks should happen next.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Scott. Yeah, let's open it up for some questions from the audience.
Well, this isn't in the chat on this particular webinar, but Scott, I would just like to ask one of the questions that me and my colleagues at the DNA get. It's pretty much the first question out of everyone's mouth. If the Keller, if if Portland's Broadway class auditorium were to move right next to 405 at the PSU site, what would happen to the site where Keller is right now? It's kind of a hard question to answer, but it's definitely one that I think is at the forefront of everyone's minds, and I'm sure you have a few words to say about that.
Well, it's very difficult to answer. Everything that we have thought of and has been presented to us doesn't come close to replacing the 400,000 people that come to visit the Keller on an annual basis. The city's consultant, who is supposedly neutral, talks about the building becoming like another Seattle marketplace, which to me is silly. If you ask the city officially, you ask the people in facilities, they tell you they don't know.
Scott, we have a couple questions in the queue. Has an acoustical engineer been selected? This is the first question.
No, we did have a consultant that helped us. And frankly, what's kind of interesting is, and this is frankly part of the PSU disinformation campaign, the Keller was designed to be a theater. And yes, it was designed to be a theater 50 years ago, and the acoustics have changed. But the ability to do both a physical and other effects that are available today to turn Keller into a state-of-the-art acoustical facility are all there, and it is part of the program. And we recognize that is a big need. And frankly, the PSU assertion that the building cannot be renovated to that level is false.
Great.
We have. Oh, sorry, Carl. Go ahead.
There are a couple other questions here. What happens to all the performances during the many months of the Keller would be under construction?
Really good question. And we have been concerned about that from the beginning. And we actually have, as part of the project at this point, $15 million set aside to take care of opera, ballet, and the Broadway Across America people, in addition to all of the other nonprofits that go there. And we're trying to pin down what the actual costs are. We've met with the stagehand union and asked them for information. But given the disparity in costs between remodeling the Keller and building a new one, you can easily, and we currently have $15 million that has been in front of city council, been in front of the mayor's office, and they haven't disagreed with it, set aside to do that. In addition, I will tell you that Broadway Across America has asked us to look at two things. The first one was, could we get from the 2,780 seats that we currently have to 3,000, because they'd like to have 3,000. So we did that. And for about $3 or $4 million, we can expand the balconies to provide for another couple hundred seats. I'm not sure that that's a real smart financial result, and in addition, the research that we've done has shown that we are already the second largest facility that they use within 1,500 miles. The only one that's larger is Phoenix, and Phoenix is a heck of a lot bigger than the city of Portland is. So, is there a real need for those many seats? And the second was to provide for some performances in between. So we looked at, along with our construction team, and came up with a proposal. And there are many ways to do this, but their end proposal was to, instead of taking 19 months of closure, taking a little over 2 years, but providing for 2 6-month periods inside that to operate the theater. So the concept is it would be closed for about 8 months, and they would do basically all exterior construction, structural entry, that sort of stuff. They would open for 6 months, and actually the audience's experience inside the theater, once they got to their seats, would be probably unchanged from today. It would then close again for another 8 or 9 months while they continue to finish that kind of work. It would open again for 6 months and provide for ballet and opera and those opportunities to happen. And still, it would be pretty much the same experience once you got to your seat. And then in the last closure, they would actually do the remodeling of the stage and the floors. And when it finally opened 3 years later, it would be totally complete and finished. That's about a $14 million addition to the cost. We're not sure that that makes sense, but City Council will have that opportunity to take a look at that and say whether they think that that makes sense. But you know, we have been very serious about attempting to mitigate that 19-month period. But when you're looking at a difference between $300 and $600 million in costs, and a difference between 19 months and more than double that time in construction, we still think it makes sense to renovate.
Great. A couple more questions here. Xavier, maybe you want to take this. I'll leave it up to you guys. Scott, you mentioned the impact as neighborhood, but isn't it district or region?
Well, it is. We have the complete support of both the Art Museum as well as the Oregon Historical Society, because they recognize that we are a key part of the arts and entertainment district in downtown Portland. It is downtown Portland. This is not the time to move 400,000 people a year out of the central district. And it would just be devastating for it to happen. So yes, we totally agree with you.
And if I can jump in on that, absolutely, I think there's a neighborhood impact, and that's why we're seeing, so many of the adjacent condo buildings, right? We have American Plaza Towers, we have the Harrison buildings, Portland Plaza, Fountain Plaza. We have the DNA, we have the Pearl District, but beyond that, I think you're absolutely right. This has regional impacts. This is not just downtown's theater. This is not just downtown backyard. Every Portlander is equally a part of the Keller and its legacy. And I think I think one of my favorite quotes is one of my own, candidly, and it's on the ournextkeller.org website. And it's, in Oregon, we don't just throw away our cultural heritage, we restore it, we repair it, we bring it in to the 21st century with us. And so absolutely, it's not just about downtown, it's about the entire city and about all of Oregon.
And I totally agree. And quite frankly, I would ask anybody, just go get into your car and try to get to the location that Portland State's trying to make as to say as part of downtown, and tell me how 1,300 people are going to get there and park and then get out of the neighborhood at the end of the day. It's just ridiculous.
A couple more questions are coming in. Let's see, for Marion, if the Keller is not selected, will the city have to invest in the safety and accessibility upgrades required of a public building? Is there a budget for that? If not, does the Keller become a derelict building?
Well, as I said earlier, they have no clue. They have no idea at this point as to what the plan would be. The one positive, if you want to call it positive, comment is they sort of recognize that it would be difficult to demolish a 100-year-old historic building in the middle of downtown Portland, but what they would do with it is they don't have a clue.
Well, I know what downtown is really in need of right now is more office space. So, that's always a contender. Yeah, pause for laughter.
Or apartments or condos, right? I mean,
Yeah.
how many cranes are going up today to build an apartment, a condo, or an office building?
Yeah.
None.
Okay. Okay, we have a question from Beth. You said it would be open 360 days a year. On
Even on days where
non-performance,
there wouldn't be a performance.
even on days, yeah. So what will be happening? Is it just a restaurant open, or will there be small performances or art shows?
The
Well,
destination.
Karen can best answer that because she is working, the Halpern Landscape Conservancy has worked to activate and provide performances through the entire sequence. And Karen, go for it.
Well, as has been introduced already, we have turned the theater inside out. Not only is it restored, it's expanded, and it reaches out to the Keller Fountain, where we already have established a programming for them for that property over the years, and we are creating a new plaza. In some, that means there's a new destination, and we kind of like to think of it that we are now kind of a sister to Pioneer Courthouse Square with all of the programming they do in that space. We will have opportunities, and we do have a program called Community Voices that has taken on the programming of a new destination, which we believe relies on new uses, both for the internal space as well as the two external spaces, starting at Keller and moving up into the sequence, which would be south. And we think that with the programming we have in mind, there will be an expanded audience and, most importantly, a diverse audience. And our plans are to review all of our content and expand our communication to the rest of the institutions and the cultural district to really make an exciting new south of a southern part of downtown, a really center of activity. We think that this project is one that is a big enough idea that will attract the attention of a lot of people, especially when we are trying to build back the Portland or build the Portland Renaissance, and it's all focused on downtown.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure who wants to take this one, but can you address this public-private concept PSU wants to use for financial risk taking? Who will own these theaters in the PSU project?
That's a really good question, and it's one that hasn't been answered. We know that the city would own Keller, and I think from what I've seen floated by PSU is that the city would somehow own the replacement for the Keller, but somehow the university would own the other 1,200 seat theater and the classrooms and all of the other stuff that went along with it. But nobody has shown that any kind of a business plan and who would manage it, and what kind of prices would have to be charged for use of it. So it's again, the Keller is a known quantity. It's got an operating model that works, that makes sense, and the PSU one is just air.
Right.
And if I could also speak a little bit to the finances here, as Scott was saying, we don't necessarily have a clear business plan at this point from PSU. on their prospectus for their project. We do know that they really see this auditorium as a revenue generator. And a presentation before the Downtown Neighborhood Association, Jason Franklin said, right now, the University Place Hotel is a liability. We want to see public money go towards building a revenue generator, an asset. I think that is this is quite a large expenditure to be getting another revenue stream for a university. It requires a lot of public funds just to get a modest return for the university, candidly. And beyond that, I don't think PSU has a very good history of philanthropic donations. Their endowment from alumni is below that of the national standard. And beyond that, this kind of speaks to something that is, near and dear to me personally. As a student, we're seeing a period of rising tuition costs. And I have classmates who are homeless. I have classmates who are single mothers. I have a classmate who's living out of his car. And there are some resources at the university for my classmates who are in that position, but certainly not enough. So candidly, I'm going a little bit off script here and I apologize, but it's a huge personal frustration to me, if not offense, to see my university spending what could be $300 million from their portion from state education funds that are not going to directly benefiting my classmates' education. So that's all I have to say on that. But thank you very much for the time. And then, Carl, I think we have.
All I would add to that is we've done some work, and of course PSU would be competing against Oregon and Oregon State for a limited amount of funds that are available for universities, and the funds that come from the state can only be used for academic uses. They can't build a hotel. They can't provide restaurants. They have to show that there is a direct academic need for each one of those uses. So to think that somehow the state is going to come up with a huge amount of the 300 million that they think that they need to raise, or that the federal government would too, is, I think, wishful thinking.
We have a couple more questions here. This is from somebody anonymous. Wouldn't the Keller performances go on as they are now at the Keller during the time PSU builds a new venue so performances are not lost from Portland?
Absolutely. Yep. No question. But then at the end of the 19 months, it's nothing. It's an empty facility across from the world famous Keller Fountain and Sequence. People will lose their jobs, businesses will close. And I can tell you, there's what we've done. We're about to come out with a public poll. The Tribune came out with a public poll. Citizens in general really support the renovation of the building. They understand it. And I'm talking 65 to 20 at best for PSU. The numbers are kind of staggering.
And this one's from Philip Sellinger. Without compromising design integrity, is there a way to increase the Keller's visibility from 4th Avenue?
I would say it would be difficult. It would be very difficult, because if you take a look at the way that landscaping works, kind of an interesting thought, but I think that the Keller Fountain itself comes so high that it's pretty difficult to get much of a view of the Keller itself from 4th.
Yeah, simply because of that slope. Though I will say, this is an iconic design. It has been talked about quite a bit on PSU that they want their new auditorium to be Portland Sydney Opera House. And while the images that have come out from PSU in this last week, I admit, are certainly very compelling, I feel strongly that this Stewfish design is, a home run. It's out of the park. This is genuinely iconic, and I think just having so much more of a physical presence, that facade coming westward will absolutely be a little bit more visible than from 4th than it is now. Additionally, This gets into one of the few DNA topics that I'm afraid might give me a stomach ulcer, but the ongoing issue of trimming trees in the South Park blocks and along the Halpern sequence. It's a fraught topic, to say the least. But I do know in the coming years that we are thinking about paring back some of those elder mature trees just so we get a little bit more light on the ground. So I think that will also assist.
And from Jeff Lang, when did Fountain change name from